Got some fruit over there too.
Yeah, fruit and coffee and water.
All right. Well, I think we can go ahead and get started then. Let's see. Is there a way for me to minimize this so we can better see?
So what you do is just make hit your toggle button.
Oh.
There you go.
Oh.
There you go.
All right.
And then hit the little minimal in the corner. Yeah, but there you
This
go.
one?
Yep. And that will shrink the controls. But you want to, did you hit record?
I did.
Oh.
I'm going too fast now, guys. Okay. Well, thank you for joining our task force for persons with disabilities. This is our first meeting, and I appreciate the patience in getting us started with this. We've been kind of waiting for a while, and then Mother Nature hasn't exactly helped us out much. So, but thank you for being here. Bishop Pace, thank you for being here. And we're going to go ahead and get started with the new moment prayer.
Okay. Word is please, very happy. Moving forward. Pro life. Well, I suggest we start with the new moment of prayer. This is also prayer. So we pray together. Oh God,
New moment. Help us to deepen our relationship with Jesus as we engage our calling as his disciples. May we bravely go out and witness to the Lord's compassion and mercy in order to touch all generations, especially the millennials. Give us insight into your intimate love and guidance to embrace the new moment. We ask this in your Son, Jesus Christ. Amen. Thank you. Well, before we get started with a whole lot this morning, I think it is important that we sing happy birthday to Bishop Pates, who is celebrating his birthday with us today. Shall we? Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you.
I feel really
Thank you.
no birthday present from me. No.
All right. Well, I just want to do just some brief introductions, and I will kind of introduce those who are not with us yet today, but we hope to gather them in the near future. As I think those of you who are on this call and in the room know me, but my name is Jess Streit, and I will serve as a chairperson for our task force. And I am the Special Needs Ministry Coordinator at St. Francis RCC, where I've been for the last 8 years. I have professional experience in the field of special needs education as well. Let's see, who is not with us? Deacon Paul Tran, who is also Faith Formation Director at which parish? St. Peter's, thank you. Brad Waller is a parishioner at St. Francis and also an individual living with mobility disabilities. Elizabeth Newton is the mother of a child with special needs and also the caregiver to her adult sister who has special needs. Belle, are you still on the call or did we lose you?
No, I'm here.
Oh, great. Belle, would you introduce yourself then?
Sure. So my name is Belle Chase, and I'm a mom of 5 boys, and I'm the development director at Iowa Catholic Radio. And I have my twins are vaccine injured, and Charlie, they're identical twins, and Charlie presents with symptoms that look like autism. That's his treatment plan. And I guess there's a little bit more hope in that, you know, there could be some healing for the brain damage that's done on him. However, you know, nonetheless, we deal with the special needs protocol every day in our household.
And Belle, would you remind me which schools are your children at?
Right. So we were at Christ the King, and we weren't able to stay there because of Charlie's IEP and his needs. So we went to Jefferson Elementary, which is our neighborhood school.
Okay, and that's the Des Moines Public School District?
Yes.
Okay. And then I should say Elizabeth Newton, her daughters attend the Waukee Public Schools. We are also missing Michael Lynn and is it Nasir Kami? They are both unable to be here today. We've already met Bishop Pates. Father Ray, would you introduce yourself?
Oh, yes, I'm Father Ray. The program council in Francis Parish in West Des Moines, and I'm very happy to say work with Jess every day.
And John Gaffney.
I'm the Diocesan Director for Evangelization and Catechesis, and very pleased that this task force has kicked off. And thank you all for your participation. And I am also a person with disabilities. I did get good news yesterday. So the leg, which should be here this week, I've been approved and ready to start physical therapy.
Yay.
Maybe as late as the end of this week. So mobility issues and for people to participate who have mobility issues in the fullness of church is very important.
Wonderful. We also have Adam Story joining us today.
Yeah, I'm just a member of the task force, but I work with disability ministry and so really involved in that.
Excellent. And Consuela?
Yes.
All right. And which school is your son at?
Ruby.
At Ruby. Oh, great. So you know some of our catechists. All right. And Paulette, I think you've muted us, but if you want to unmute and introduce yourself, you can. Otherwise, I can do that.
No, I'm here.
Okay.
I'm Paulette Chapman. I am Director of Faith Formation at St. John and Paul Parish in Altoona, and we are making baby steps into the world of ministry with folks with special needs, and very appreciative of all of the resources and guidance that we've received from Jess and folks at St. Francis. So thank you for including me on the task force today.
You guys are doing awesome work, Paula. We're very excited. And then Veronica.
Yeah, I'm Veronica Wright, Director of Faith Formation up at St. Michael's in Harlan, Iowa. And we have the inspiration for our special needs program was 3 autistic triplets who had basically been sent home after 2nd grade. And anyway, they are going to be confirmed in 2 weeks, so we're pleased with that.
Yay! Thank you so much for your work, Veronica. You guys are doing amazing things out there. I'm excited for you to share more.
Great.
All right.
I will say I'm not catching a lot of what everyone else is saying. I will
do a better job of repeating that then. Thank you for letting me know, Veronica.
Okay.
All right, well, we are going to just move forward then. And I'm not sure if those of you joining us on the call are able to see this if you're up on computer. We have just a short video, but you can certainly listen, and I'll include the links to this later. This is a short video clip called Belonging Starts Here. It was created by the Archdiocese of Washington Department of Special Needs Ministry. Mary O'Mara is their executive director out there, and she was recently in Des Moines at St. Francis in October and gave a really wonderful presentation to us. So she's a wealth of knowledge and a really great resource for our diocese as we continue to grow this ministry. So I just thought this would be a great way for us to start. If I can get it, let's see. be maybe up on here. Oh, I can hear it.
I see it. I see the face page, but I don't. There we go. There it is.
There we go. Oh, goodness. Here we go. Well, we didn't quite catch all of that, but most of it, so I think we get the idea. So that's just a really nice little introduction video that kind of details that belonging starts here and now. And our Holy Father has given us the really great message that there is no separate church. And I think all of us on this task force have felt that and believed that, and we know that to be true. But there are logistical considerations, and we need to have a strategic plan in place, and we need to do this and do it well. So that's why we're here, is to put these things into action and really make sure that our parishes are equipped with everything that they need to provide that welcome and that belonging. So together with Bishop Pates, this is the purpose of our task force. I think it's important to make sure as you're signing on to something and you're going forward, you need to know what the purpose is, why, and what needs to come out of this. What will come out of our work? What is our goal? So our purpose as this task force is going to be to establish goals for a diocesan disability ministry, and then to review and provide feedback on a job description for a staff person to support disability ministry within the diocese. Bishop Pates has pledged his support that he feels it is important to have someone on the diocesan staff that can really help guide this ministry and form it and to continue to move it forward. There have been some drafts of job descriptions, and it will be us as the task force that is asked to provide some feedback on what we think needs to be in that job description. Primarily, however, it's the goals. What do we feel a disability ministry at the diocesan level should look like? What are the key goals that we're going to want to implement for the short term, and then looking into 5 years down the road. So our product will be a list of goals for disability ministry. Approximately 10 is about what I'm thinking, and then we'll break that down into shorter term and a little bit longer term. And then a proposed framework for meeting and supporting those goals. So not only are we looking at the goals, but then how are we going to support those? And what will that look like, particularly as we reach out to our parishes? There's a lot of different ways that this can look. In my research, I've spoken with and met with numerous diocesan personnel and also parish advocates and things like that. And there's no one cookie cutter design, which is almost what makes it difficult. And we found that at St. Francis when we forged forward with this ministry. It really just needed to be what we felt was important to our demographics, and then we needed to build it from there. So part of what we'll do as this task force is look at what other dioceses and what other areas are doing. We can utilize some of those pieces, but then really tailor it to meet the needs of our particular diocese. So today's meeting is really going to be just giving you a lot of information. We're not going to be getting into a whole lot of the work today. I wanted to make sure we had some background information. There's going to be some homework that I want us to take home and do. And then when we gather back together next time, will be really a working session of nailing out those goals and some of that framework and starting to really look at what we want that to look like for us. Some key issues that we will need to address as we move forward is where are we currently at with meeting the needs of disabilities in our diocese. Our diocese is really starting to move forward, particularly in the area of faith formation, most specifically youth faith formation, and I see that as a good place to start. It's not the only place to start, but it's where we chose to start for St. Francis, and it really worked well for us. Because we see a lot of children that are coming to us with increased amounts of special needs. And so we are taking those needs, meeting them right now, one or two at a time, and then building and growing from there. This ministry will need to be a slow and steady progression. And we say at St. Francis, if you build it, they will come. And they will. We want to reach back out and welcome back our brothers and sisters that have left our faith. We also need to address and know what we have to work with, budget, resources, staff. Right now we have John is our diocesan staff representative. We also have support from Adam and of course support from Bishop Pates. John, do you want to share at all any of the information on what type of other resources we have, particularly budget, just to get us started?
So with regards to the budget, and right now is budget time. So if there are recommendations that you would make, please email those to me as to what you think would be helpful for the budget. But when Bishop Pates approved the position, he didn't just approve a position, he also approved a ministry. And so there is money in the budget for travel. There is money in the budget for bringing in a resource for a workshop day to break open disability ministry. There is money for staff to be able to work one-on-one or in regional settings with parish staff and with pastors. There is also money for a part-time individual to work in the office. And then there's also money to build a resource library. And that I think will be very important. And when I think of resource libraries, also think of subscriptions. Subscriptions are really helpful, especially when you purchase them on a diocesan level. Many times you can afford to have pay a little bit more money, and then go ahead and be able to share those with your parishes. So if there's subscriptions, one subscription, and it's not really a subscription, it's a membership that we belong to. And I think this is one area that I think we just need to be a good advocate for, and that's the National Catholic Partnership on Disability. And so we are a member of that. In fact, Bishop Pates just sent the renewal information, and we budget that through evangelization and catechesis, actually. But it is an annual membership that we belong to, and just a great resource, and really the advocates with the bishops when it comes to disability. So that's what we currently have, and we're going to move forward. But again, if there are some areas you would like me to consider as I propose the 2020 budget, please send that as soon as you can so that we can include that. Thank you. Any questions people have?
Do we have any questions yet?
I was wondering, when you said part-time, is that is the staff position a part-time position, or is the staff person going to get an assistant who's part-time? I didn't quite.
Oh, very good. Well, the position of the professional staff person is an act staff. So this would actually be someone similar to.
I can't hear that.
Someone similar to Jess's.
So I think the question is, the diocese is looking to hire someone on a part-time basis to serve as disability ministry.
That's what I wanted to know.
Yep.
Thank you.
You bet. Okay, any other questions?
Can I ask yeah, this is Belle.
Yep.
And I guess first, I was having trouble hearing John. He was faded pretty far off. I don't know if there's, just so you know. And then my question is, and I'm kind of getting up to speed, you know, as I'm just listening here. John, when you say if there's any areas that we need to consider when proposing a 2020 budget, are there any, is the area of providing special needs services within our parish schools being considered so we quit losing an extraordinary amount of families to public schools and not serving those marriages and families and children?
Val, that's an excellent question, and Bishop Pates and I actually just met and talked about that. One of the pieces that he would really like to see come out of this task force is increased attention to special needs within our schools and looking at ways to do that strategically. We definitely, the desire is definitely there to bring this to our Catholic schools. And so I think there is some room in the budget to utilize for resources to start looking at that. It is and needs to be a process that we will continue to talk about. And so it's something that we want to engage in slow and steady. But definitely it is on the top of the radar for one of the goals that we want to put together from this task force.
Yeah, and thank you for answering that. And I do want to take this opportunity with all the, you know, dynamic people we have here listening that can make a difference to, you know, when a priest gets up on the pulpit and he looks out into that parish, you know, in his audience there, 1 in 58 families has a special needs person in their life. And we're losing those families because we don't provide services in the schools. And it's, just correct me if I'm wrong, but it's about an 80% divorce rate for people with special needs children. So we have a silent epidemic going on where we need support more than ever for our marriages and families and not to be turned away by our own father in church. And so just to plant that on your hearts, I don't have the answer. I just see the issue going on amongst friends and families, and as you all do, because you're, you know, here today. And obviously, we're not going to solve it today, but just since I have the opportunity to plant that on your heart, and maybe, hopefully, something will come out of it through our task force here. And so that's all. Thank you.
Belle, can you hear Bishop?
Can you hear me, Belle?
No, I can't.
You can?
No, I can't.
Are you on? What are you on?
There, now I can hear you.
Okay, good. I don't know if you're on the phone or on the computer or whatever. But at any rate, Belle, I think we're coming to the conclusion of this study for our schools. I think today the task force should ask that the consideration be given, or at least move forward with a study or something in a final plan or final report for disabilities in our schools. Since I've been bishop, that's the primary, concern that has been raised to me, the young people in schools and providing for them. So, and I think also for high school, Dowling should undertake a very special study of this and move forward with it. So I agree with you totally. And also we have Adam's story here with regard to our marriages, etc. And we have to be aware of those things. And I think the task force today might say those we should ask our various commissions and committees to move forward with the study and report back to us. But especially, I would advise, if it's possible, to get it into the long-range study that's coming forward from the schools, because that's coming out next month. So we may as well get it in now. And I would endorse it very strongly
as very important to go forward. So I wouldn't hesitate, whatever we can do today, come up with some sort of statement to give to that three-part group. And I would also suggest, because we virtually have only one high school in the city of Des Moines, or in the area here, that specifically we address also Dowling Catholic and ask, some conversation begin, at least with the level of Dr. Ryan, and move from there. So I think, we're aware of all these issues, and while we want to take our time, be deliberate, there are certain areas that we probably need to kind of put the emphasis on and get it in record and begin the discussions, because it's going to take a great deal of time, with Adam's department and all these sorts of things, really get it on hold. So I really appreciate your interest in it, and let's move today to at least come up with, motions, what do you want to call them, to get this thing on those two areas, both the marriage and also with the schools, and with an underlying thing of beginning a discussion immediately with Dowling Catholic.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate that.
And that is already in the works. Adam was working to get a meeting at some point in the very near future for us to kind of get that on the docket here. So, all right. Anything else before we move on? Okay, so just to kind of review what we will be doing with our task force. I know we've got lots of issues that we want to tackle, but we want to make sure that we are doing them strategically. So our process and how we're going to go about our work. In future meetings, we will be reviewing essential components from Universal Design on a diocesan level. That's from the National Catholic Partnership on Disability. And that document is going to be very helpful for us in knowing how to go about our work and how to plan out our goals so that we're not missing any areas like school, like marriage, faith formation, those types of things. As I said, there's no one cookie cutter method to a disability ministry, but the NCPD, or National Catholic Partnership on Disability, has given us a really great resource in this UD or Universal Design for diocesan level, and we can certainly use that to build on. Also in future meetings, we'll be drafting our diocesan ministry goals and then reviewing and providing feedback on that part-time diocesan coordinator of disability ministry job description. So as I said, this meeting is kind of our introduction, and then the next couple of meetings will be work sessions where we will dive in. And then I would like to discuss with you the option of bringing someone in for a half day or perhaps even a full day to do a workshop time for us to really dissect some of the work that we're really going into. A great resource for us would be Tom Rakunas from the Archdiocese of Kansas City, Kansas. Tom and I have met and collaborate on a number of things at this point, and he is the director at the diocese there. So Tom will be a great resource for us. We might do a little bit of share. I might go out there and support him, and then he can come here and we'll call it even or something. All right, so communication is going to be key with our task force. We have a lot of work to do. We have sensitive topics, and we want to move quickly. While slow and steady, we're going to go at a good pace here because we know a lot of us have been waiting for a very long time. So we want to really get things moving. So who needs to know about our progress and who will communicate our activities? Of course, Bishop Pace will be as involved as he can be, but with his busy schedule, we know he won't be able to participate in all of our meetings. So John Gaffney, as our diocesan staff representative, will make sure that he is in contact with the bishop. And then information needing to be documented at each meeting and who is responsible. We'd like to have notes be taken by a task force scribe, or call it a secretary, someone who willingly accepts this position. So do we have anybody today that's willing to just do that for us?
Well, one question, and I don't know if you want to share it to them.
Sure.
Sherry is our administrative assistant.
Yes.
For this. So Sherry could come down and be our note taker.
Oh, that would
And
be
that way,
wonderful.
people in the task force can listen.
Yes.
And respond.
Is everybody in agreement? Is that, okay, I think that's a wonderful idea, John. That way we can continue to be engaged in conversation and we'll utilize Sherry and her talents in that way. Thank you for offering that. Yes, please. And then information will be shared via email from each of our meetings. We also have the opportunity to record these meetings through GoTo. So if anyone is absent or can't even join on the call remotely, you can go back and please do review the recording of that. We'll ask Sherry to send out the link to that or however that is, and then also with our notes from the meeting. So if you need to miss a meeting, please continue to stay engaged in all of our work in that way. And that way we don't lose ground. Our operating logistics, how often we meet, where and when. I would like to recommend that we continue meeting at the Pastoral Center here in this room. It's a nice central location, but we also have the go-to meeting capabilities here.
I think also just garage about a block away.
Okay.
On Grand Avenue. They're very welcome to park there at the in the diocese room.
Okay.
They just have to identify themselves. I think that's how it works.
Okay.
Yeah, being here only a block away. On Grand Avenue.
Brown Garage in.
Garage is on the other side of the block.
On Grand Avenue on the other side of the Y is a place that we can park as long as we identify ourselves. Okay. For diocesan
And they will bill us.
Okay.
Bill you.
Okay. And that will be billed to the diocese. So we are able to park at Brown Garage on a block away on Grand Avenue for these meetings. Yes.
I think 2 or 3.
Yes.
The other cars.
Yes.
So we need to keep those free.
Yes, please.
Disability.
So those who are utilizing disability or handicap parking, please utilize those spots in the back of the pastoral center. Okay.
Because I think it is.
Yes, yes.
Yes.
So they could come through there, and if we are aware they're coming, or they could call.
Yeah.
And then I think elsewhere, pretty well, the front door.
Yes.
Doors now are all
Very accessible now.
And we come down here. The idea is that we have all this technology. Hopefully, it's a valuable help for us.
Yes,
you know?
very much so.
And just, I'll include my phone number, my cell phone number in the notes.
Yes.
So if somebody does want to use the back door, they just let me know and we'll make sure we have it open.
Wonderful. So John will include his cell phone number. And then if you need to get a hold of him to get through that back door, just give him a call. My cell phone number is also in there. Everyone has a binder. Veronica, I believe you have yours. And who else did we send? Nasir. Okay, so we sent Nasir's. So the rest of you, we can get those to you, but you have an actual binder for our task force, and there are various tabs in there. There's a welcome letter from me, and then there's a tab with contact information. My cell phone number is shared. Everyone's, the number that we have on file, as well as the email address that we have on file is there. If you look through that and you see any changes, please do let us know.
I think if we need any other help, wide open suggestions.
Yes.
In terms of how you, etc. So don't hesitate.
So please do let us know if we need to make some adaptations in our meeting times for you. Originally, we had discussed having this task force meet quarterly for 2 years, but because of our later start, per Bishop Pates, we would like to increase that a little bit if everyone is comfortable. My thought is bi-monthly, so every other month we would meet and try to move forward in the time frame of 1 year. At this time, are there any concerns with moving forward every other month for 1 year?
Do you mean it's summer?
To get momentum, and possibly meeting through the summer, yes. Bishop says we are air conditioned.
Yeah, so am I.
And as long as we have the go-to meeting capabilities, and of course, if someone needs to miss a meeting, you can catch up with that information via email and the recording at another time. We'd love to have as much attendance as possible, but I know there are outside issues. But if the consensus is that we are comfortable every other month for 1 year time, then that is how we will move forward. Okay.
So our plan, we're looking at sometime now in April, June, and August.
Correct.
Okay.
Because
Probably
February, April, June, yes. And then if we are able to get in a half-day workshop or a day workshop with Tom or Kunis, that might be an additional thrown in there. But again, please come as you're able. Hopefully you've already noticed the form of decision making that we are going to utilize here is going to be discussion and collaborative decision making, so that we can seek a consensus. As chairperson, I do not intend to necessarily make final decisions unless we get to that point, but I would really like for us to be able to operate on that discussion and collaboration in reaching a consensus. I think that is a good way for us to do when we're considering ministry and we're all coming from such diverse backgrounds. Okay. I do want to share with you today a little bit of background information. Some of this you may be familiar with, others perhaps not. I love this image. It is the image of Jesus welcoming the man through the roof. His friends did whatever they could to get him to Jesus, and that is our charge. Whatever we can do to bring all of our brothers and sisters to Jesus, that is our ultimate goal. So just some community statistics for you. 1 in 5 Americans has a disability. That's a lot. And that is accurate. That's from the CARA Special Report, which you have access to. Please keep in mind that disability is a very broad range. We have diagnosed disabilities in childhood. We also have late onset adult related or aging related disabilities. And that really is a key piece facing our demographics in our diocese is age related disabilities. 1 in 6 children ages 3 to 17 are diagnosed with autism. And autism is a spectrum disorder, so it is a wider range. 11.9% of people in Iowa have a disability. 31,589 children under the age of 18 have a diagnosed disability. That's a lot of our students. And as you already said, Belle, we're missing them. We have heard countless stories of families who have left Catholic schools or have even left Catholic parishes for our Protestant brothers and sisters and public schools because they didn't feel their children were welcome. There were no programs to support them. And we are here to start making that change. 32.7% of Iowans ages 65 plus have a disability. The most staggering statistic to me that always breaks my heart is 80% of parents who receive a poor prenatal diagnosis choose to terminate their pregnancy in abortion. And we have heard time and time again from our Catholic families that you encouraged me to give life to my child. I knew my child was going to have a disability. You encouraged me. You lifted me up during that time. You even baptized my child as a baby. You welcomed them, but then there was nothing. My child could not attend faith formation. I was told my child was too disruptive to attend Mass. I couldn't come to those things. They couldn't celebrate their sacraments, and they couldn't come to our schools. So we have left. Belle, you already indicated the divorce rate for parents of children with special needs is higher than average. Previous studies have told us right around 80%. That specific data is under review right now and has been for about the last year and a half. They're thinking it still ranges around that 70 to 80% range, but I'll put that out there that it is under review. John.
Can you share with the group also, in our diocese, we have over 12,000 young people, pre-K to high school, in our parish programs as well.
So say that number again.
Over 12,000.
Over 12,000 pre-K through high school in our diocesan programs.
Yes, that are coming to our parishes.
That are coming to our parishes. So that's a large number, 12,000. And if we consider 1 in 68, and that 1 in 68 has autism, and we have a large percentage of children.
Yeah.
Over 6,000 are in our Catholic schools. 20,000 children under some form of our Catholic education. And then we need to consider how many we've lost or are losing.
Right, that's what exactly.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And then the diocese itself has grown by 50%. Population line.
In the last 10 years, the diocese itself has grown 15% in terms of our population. That's another 10 or 15,000 individuals.
So it's a growing.
At St. Francis alone, we have 3,500 families, and we are serving about 25 students just in our faith formation program with significant special needs.
Congratulations.
Thank you. we grew small. And actually, Consuelo, I'd be really interested in this statistic. I don't have the exact numbers, but it is my understanding that the statistical information for Hispanic children on the autism spectrum is growing at perhaps a higher rate even than some other backgrounds. Perhaps. I mean, it really is, we're not sure. Do you have a good answer to that? Some families don't want to accept that diagnosis and then are seeking the diagnosis. Yes.
There's times that I see it.
You see it.
I see it. And I try to let them know
Yep.
this, and we can ask their
Mm-hmm.
where they are, so it would help them. I asked them how I could go, and they do tell me that they're a little bit behind. So I'm like, we could try. There's some families that I have told them that they have been diagnosed.
Mm-hmm.
Right now we have about 10 students. Our parents come to class.
Okay. You have 10 students at Our Ladies of the Americas whose parents that have disabilities and their parents are attending with them to support. Okay. Yep. Yep. Sure.
Things do come in, but they still don't want to talk because they don't want to put them in that.
Okay. And we see that kind of across the board with families, still coming to grips with the things that they're seeing and what they want to share. Yes. So much of this really is an attitude change, not only for ourselves, for our parents, our families, but also within our parishes, within our clergy, and just sort of across the board, society-wide, just making that attitudinal change. There are some great statistics looking at parishes. And again, you have all of these in your binder, and I'll kind of point those out here in a few minutes. But there are some studies done by Kara. And they were done in 2016 and 2017. I believe they're working on another one now. 96% of responding parishes have wheelchair accessible entrance, but only half of those have a wheelchair accessible sanctuary. So how are they approaching the altar? And I think the statistic looks great. On one hand, we've got 96% of parishes, this is nationwide, have wheelchair accessible entrance, but it goes beyond getting through the door. And a lot of times we stop at looking at ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act. We try to make sure that we are meeting the bare minimum for accessibility. But then what about that welcome and that inclusion? we have a beautiful brand new sanctuary at Dowling Catholic High School, which is lovely. And it is my understanding that the sanctuary, the altar area, is not accessible. There is not a ramp there. There's only a couple steps, but there is not a ramp. Yes, and that was a number of years ago. I know Kyle Lechtenberg tried to get that pushed through, and a lot of architects don't want to do that. Architects, won't want to do that, just aesthetic reasoning. But we need to consider things like that, and what message does that send our young people? And it's the same in our parishes. We need to consider the age of many of our priests and mobility challenges. How many steps are there to the top of an altar? We've got tripping hazards and things like that. At St. Francis alone, we have a wheelchair accessible sanctuary. You can get to our altar area, but an individual in a wheelchair or other mobility assisting device needs to, if they're a lector, they need to go to the cantor stand in order to proclaim the word, because our AMBO sits too high. We're working on a grant right now to get an electrically adjustable AMBO that they already have at Our Lady's Immaculate Heart in Ankeny. It's beautiful, and it raises and lowers at the push of a button. And that's also great for kids or people like myself who are a little short. And, I have a hard time seeing that AMBO. My husband always says, I can't see your face. So I wear my big high heels. But not everybody has that ability, right? So it's little things, and we need to consider how welcoming that is, that we are accessible, but also the message that we're sending to our young people that are considering being priests. And entering into religious vocations. So this is a widespread, and we need to think quite broad.
Question.
Hang on just a second.
Ben, do you want to do a study of all of our parishes?
Yes.
Get an update that move forward, that they have within a certain period of time.
Yes.
Be conformable to. I'm surprised at this stage.
Because the facility, and actually, just so everyone is clear and knows, the Americans with Disabilities Act is not worship space. Once the worship space is accessible, the entrance, nothing else needs to comply to Americans with Disabilities Act. The actual space is not tied to those regulations. It is considered best practice, but it is not a requirement. So nothing was done wrong, in looking at regulations for universal design, but we need to consider beyond the regulations. So yes, so now we need to do what is right. Yes.
Be able to see a ramp.
Absolutely. Well, no, I don't believe so. So we will need a railing. So Bishop is concerned with what's happened with the Dowling Chapel. So that's something that we will want to look into. And then he also has suggested that perhaps we look into a study of our current parishes and where we're at accessibility-wise. And I think that's a good start to look at, are we at least accessible entrance and bathrooms and things like that. But then the next step would be our programming and our welcoming and our ministries. For the most part, because of ADA, our buildings are accessible. You can get into them. How comfortable they are is another question, and that's something that we really should consider looking at. So that will be an item that I add to our next working meeting, is that we will review some surveys of parishes to start sending out to our parishes, and then also to our schools. I think would be a great way to do that. Yes, Father Ray has a question.
I remember filling out CARA study. What do we do? The money got right now.
Well, the CARA study, I'm not sure how much of that was sent to WCs. This is referenced from 2016 and 2017. John, do you have more recent?
Yeah.
Okay.
So that study was conducted by CARA for the U.S. bishops.
It was done by CARA through the U.S. bishops.
It was the summer of 2016, and what we chose to do is send it out to pastors to get as much information as we could, so we could report back adequately.
Great. And John, do we have that information just from our Des Moines, Diocese of Des Moines parishes, or was all that sent to CARA and we no longer have access to that?
Let me investigate.
John will investigate that. The last accessibility survey of any kind that I have had access to was done in 1999, and over half of our parishes did not participate. So Bishop says we need to make it mandatory. I think the way to
Survey should come out.
yes.
Otherwise, they don't. They don't pay much. Unfortunately, not that I'm anxious to. We want to have a responsibility.
Correct.
I have a responsibility that everybody is surveyed, and if they would just keep contact with each other.
Okay.
And the
So
enforcement of it. And I think, well, perhaps you took a survey, but I don't know what.
I'd have to look back. It appeared from memory that I was thinking we had about 2/3, but and most of them in the Des Moines area,
metro area.
And people that had new worship space renovations.
So John felt the participation within our diocese for the CARA studies was about 2/3, the majority of those being the metro parishes and those having newer, more recently renovated worship spaces.
Right. It was a work with the worship office.
Okay. Joint with the worship
Kim
office.
Mandelko was the worship director, and because most of it had to deal with worship spaces.
Do we have another question, Veronica, perhaps, or someone?
Well, my first question actually Bishop addressed, because I was thinking we should have a checklist or something that we need to go back into our own parishes for those of us who are, working in the parish and check over our whole program as well as the physical plant. But I was wondering now, since we've started this discussion, if the safety committee wouldn't also be part of this, because part of the ramp issue, providing ramps and all of that is a general safety concern. And I did, that's just, we're doing a lot with safety at St. Michael's right now, so I just kind of on my mind, but.
That's a really great question, and I don't want to open up a whole can of worms at this point because, yes, there are a lot of safety concerns when you're considering individuals with disabilities because we also, for when we decide to go down that route, we also need to consider things like making sure our smoke detectors and our fire alarms are dual equipped, that sound and flash, that we are taking into consideration evacuation plans and evacuating children and individuals with mobility issues and things like that. So there's a lot to consider within the safety realm, and we've been considering that at St. Francis quite extensively, particularly when we're talking about faith formation nights and we have children that may not be able to evacuate in the same manner when those things need to come into place. So that is definitely an issue that we will kind of keep our eye on, but sort of table a little bit for now. I want to keep us a little bit focused on what we can impact right now. But thank you so much for bringing that up. Mm-hmm. Other statistics here, just to share quickly, 7 in 10 parishes responding did not have a staff member who was responsible for parish efforts to serve persons with disabilities, and less than half of the pastors who responded said they were aware of opportunities within their diocese for staff to access training opportunities. You'll see time and time again, and this is another reason I think this task force is so important, pastors nationwide are responding and saying they want opportunities for training and support, and that it needs to come from their diocese. They're looking to the diocesan offices to provide this for them. So some resources here that are in your binder. The first one, I believe it would be tab number 4 for everyone. And these are all available online, but I also wanted you to have a hard copy because we're going to be taking some notes and doing some things here. You have access to the pastoral statement of U.S. Catholic bishops on people with disabilities, and that is actually back in 1978. But this document was really instrumental and pivotal in starting a lot of work with persons with disabilities, not only within the Catholic realm, but also in our secular world. So I really encourage everyone to read through this. It's an easy read. It's not very long. And this will really give us a strong basis on where to start our work. The next tab should be guideline for celebrating the sacraments with persons with disabilities. This document is another really great, easy to read document that unfortunately our pastors receive and have copies of, but they, like a lot of statements, our pastors get lots and lots of statements, and it's not one that they are necessarily well versed in. And so I found a lot of our pastors reaching out and wanting support for this, and I applaud them for doing so. This document was also originally written in 1978, but it received a wonderful uplift in the summer of 2017. U.S. Catholic bishops have done a phenomenal job of looking at receiving sacraments for persons with disabilities, down to how to provide communion, the Eucharist, with persons with feeding tubes. Reconciliation with individuals who are nonverbal, administering the sacrament of matrimony with individuals with disabilities, and also holy orders. So this is a really, really great document that I want us to pull apart and look at, because I think this will guide our goals quite extensively. Father Ray, I don't know if you can speak at all to your experience with this document as a pastor previously, as opposed to now, and how you found it supportive or not of your work.
I have the original one. I implemented some of the recommendations here. The second was about Operation the Seal. It was several times sacrament reconciliation, and different ways we can celebrate the sacrament of somebody with different needs, nonverbal. Sometimes another person, you have to get over that. You have to get over that. There are a lot of people say, "Well, you can't have a person with you." Well, the person's nonverbal, and they're a translator.
The person uses sign language, and you don't. We need to have that.
Flashcards. Somebody. I thought this was a very good distance document. And, I have benefited from it. I have the joy of celebrating sacraments to people who otherwise might think cannot. How can they possibly celebrate sacraments? Well,
So Father Ray was previously not well versed. He'd read the original document, but has found it useful and very joyful in his work in administering sacraments. John?
So on average, each year I receive about 3 to 5 conversations with pastors, mostly about Eucharist, First Holy Communion, or confirmation. This year I've reached about 9 or 10, because without a worship director, pastors have been calling. And we have quite a few wonderful pastors who are not native to this diocese, and a lot of them from Ghana, wonderful pastors, but they have questions. So this is, what I want to say is, this is an area that I think would be very beneficial to a lot of people.
John just indicated that on average he receives about 3 to 5 calls from pastors regarding celebrating sacraments with persons with disabilities. And this year, minus the worship liturgy director, he's had about 9 to 10 conversations, and I would add a few more to that, John. I have been getting those phone calls myself, and generally provide my suggestions with then please call John Gaffney or someone at the diocese, since I'm not really in charge. So I'm happy to have those conversations, but I want to make sure that they're hearing from someone at the diocese as well.
I think it's important to tell the bishop.
Yes. Yes.
Otherwise, but more and more,
Yes.
every 10 or 15 a year, and they're doing beautiful.
So
If the bishop
Bishop appreciates the information ahead of time to know when he's going to be supporting individuals with disabilities in their sacraments as well. Other documents that we are sharing with you, there's a Welcome and Justice for Persons with Disabilities. This is a framework of access and inclusion. It is another statement from our U.S. bishops, and a lot of this is taken from the guidelines of celebrating the sacraments and the original statement from the U.S. Catholic bishops from 1978. It's sort of just this was done in 1998. It's sort of a meat and potatoes version, pulled out the additionally important pieces there. So that's just a small document. The 7th tab you have is a really beautiful address by Pope Francis. I was blessed to be in the hall at the Vatican when he gave this address. Of course, I didn't understand it. It was in Italian, but I read it later and I knew it was beautiful. And when I read it later, I was even more blessed by it. I had the wonderful blessing of attending the Pontifical Council for the new evangelization. They did a conference over there in Rome in 2017, and it was full of individuals who are supportive of this mission of our church. So beautiful address by Pope Francis, and I provide that for you just so you can be aware of what our Holy Father has to say on this matter. And then the 2 reports there for you next from CARA, which is the Center for Applied Research in the Apostolate, and those come out of Washington, D.C. The first one is disabilities in parishes across the United States, how parishes in the U.S. accommodate and serve people with disabilities. And the second is how diocesan Catholic charities accommodate and serve persons with disabilities. So I'm not going to go over all of those now. That's actually going to be part of your homework. But I just wanted to call your attention to that. And like I said, I'll put it all electronically, but we'll also get those binders for you. A wonderful quote here from the guidelines for the celebration of the sacraments with persons with disabilities from 2017. I think this can just really serve as our vision statement, our mission statement as we move forward with this task force. The Church owes persons with disabilities her best efforts in order to ensure that they are able to hear the gospel of Christ, receive the sacraments, and grow in their faith in the fullest and richest manner possible. Dr. Nancy Thompson from National Catholic Partnership on Disability, who has since retired, once told me, we are well past welcoming. The welcome is there. The invitation has been made. We gave that at baptism. What are we doing now? We need to move past. And I think that is so impactful. What's available to help us in our work? We're going to be utilizing these things. I've just got a bulleted list for you. It's also under the resources tab in your binder. National Catholic Partnership on Disability is a wonderful resource. They are based out of Washington. Janice Benton is their director. I've had numerous conversations with Jan. She is very excited about what's happening in Des Moines and is going to be a big cheerleader for us. Also, the National Catholic Office for the Deaf, which Father Mike Depsick out of Detroit really supports. Father Mike is also aware of what's going on here in the Diocese of Des Moines, as is Father Paul Zerminia. They are both priests who are deaf. They're very excited for us. The Institute for Pastoral Initiatives, the University of Dayton, has some good resources. Loyola Press is really the only faith formation curriculum right now that has done anything with special needs, and they've called me quite a bit in the last year asking for feedback on their curriculum materials and the things that they offer, and we've had some really great conversations. I love the products that are coming out of there, so we're going to look a lot at those.
I use those.
I did. Wonderful, wonderful. Yeah. I think a lot of us do because that's what we have. There in the past there was the Rose Fitzgerald Kennedy a curriculum which is past its prime. There's a St. Mary's curriculum also kind of past its prime. Loyola Press is really the one that's in here and now. There's some other things there. I've also attached some diocesan websites for you to just, if you get a second, to kind of peruse some of those. As I already said, Mary O'Mara from Archdiocese of Washington, D.C. has a wonderful program out there. Archdiocese of Kansas City, Kansas, that's Tom Rakunis. Catholic Diocese of Wichita, and then as we were talking about the Catholic schools, I really encourage you guys to look at the Fire Foundation. These are foundations set up. We are fortunate to have one actually in Northeast Iowa. I have not met with them, but I have met with Fire Foundation of Kansas City, and they have some really wonderful framework and procedures for us to look at how to start this with our Catholic schools and seek funding sources, how to trickle down that funding, and how to make sure we're working with public entities. Because of course we're looking at federal documents that are legally binding when you have a child with disabilities in your schools. The IEP process is a legal document, and so we need to tread carefully and make sure that we are ready and prepared before we start to dive into that. So that's just a list of resources. What I want you to do between now, I know I've just absolutely thrown a ton at you in this meeting, and I apologize for that. Trust me, it won't always be like this. We're going to do a lot of work, but I know that there were some things that you needed to have first. To respect our time, however, I don't want to dive into all of these things, all of these documents in our time together. I would like you to do that on your own. So our next steps, kind of your to-do, please review the supporting documents provided in your binder and just jot some notes. What questions do you have? What things really stood out to you? And then also consider any additional resources we may need in order to complete our work. I think John's also added that if you have anything that you know you're needing or you think is going to be of value, and we need to consider that for the next budget year, please get that to him quickly. Okay, that is all I have for today. What questions do we have before we go into our closing prayer?
What did you say?
So the question from Bishop is, do we agree on the, based on this meeting, that we need to submit something to the school study quickly? Persons with disabilities.
Maybe John can discuss it. Okay. You know what? Right.
So at this, yes. So at this point, I think the general consensus that I'm sort of seeing around the room, and I trust from our electronic audience as well, Bishop would like us to, John will prepare a statement from Bishop Pates to give to the long-range strategic planning committee or commission with the schools. That long-range planning should include implementation for resources and modifications and accommodations for persons with disabilities. Okay? All right, so John can do that, and I'll help provide some feedback in collaboration with our task force. Okay.
In other words,
Absolutely. Yes. Okay. All right. So that statement will be created by John and will be sent to Bishop to share with the long-range strategic planning with the schools. Is everyone okay with that?
Yes.
Thank you.
I do have a question. I want to.
Yes, question.
As we were talking, I live in the Archdiocese of Omaha and work in the Diocese of Des Moines. So I was curious to know what's going on in Omaha in regard to special needs. I do know that two parishes are partnering with a special needs school called Madonna. Because they have so few children, they are actually now mainstreaming them into two different parishes, and they're hiring special needs teachers to be in the Catholic school to serve these children. So hopefully, I think the goal is to increase that number and keep them in the Catholic school. But I also ran across an article, and this may apply eventually to Des Moines also, that the public school system is pulling funding for kids who are not in their actual public school. So if you, in Omaha, if you are in OPS or West Side, there's two different districts, and send your child to a Catholic school, wherever that Catholic school is, that district has to provide the funding and pay for special needs help. But they're pulling that. OPS is no longer going to be doing that unless they're actually living in OPS district boundaries. So the services that this example child at St. Margaret Mary's in Omaha Public School District, he will no longer receive the funding for his hearing impairment. So there's, we may lose. I'm seeing this as like we're going to be losing children from the Catholic school who have been served with their special needs through the public school. But now, if they lose that funding, the parents may choose to actually send them to a public school.
Okay, so what I think I am hearing you say is that within Omaha, your understanding is that the state and federal funding that is attached to a child with special needs, previously, if they were served by their Catholic school, that money followed them from the state. And what you're hearing now is that the public school entities are going to keep that funding and not allow that to follow the child. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, it looked like I'll send you the article, Jess, but it looked like because they might live in one district, but the Catholic school is in the other district, it has to do with boundaries and that kind of thing. So they've been pretty lenient, I think, up to this point, but OPS is facing a lot of budget issues, and so that was, I think, one way to.
That's going to be the key right there, Veronica, is the changing of the districts. To my understanding, schools can retract that funding if they're going to another district. So that's, and I think that this ability to serve individuals in their schools with special needs is maybe newer to the Omaha area. And within the Catholic schools, I'm not 100% sure on that. But for example, in the Kansas City areas and in Oklahoma and some of those areas, that's why these foundations have been set up. And they have ways, and I am not clear on this yet. I haven't really dove into that, but there have been ways to get that funding to make sure that it's staying with the child.
Anyway, interesting, but budgets are certainly part of all of it.
Absolutely.
Hey, Jessica.
Bishop is sharing on the education committee.
Only want to solve it on our local level, the education committee of the USCCB and maybe these other foundations that are really working on it. Because these local level management got reported, they just continue to do it. But they have certain, and I think our own superintendent found some grants and all that sort of thing that were in to our schools, but we're not being filled. And so she called the question. So I think also with this is that you should look at the national level, because if it's the legislation, I didn't even know that. But they allocated, and then the public schools ate it all up, and there was supposed to be a private reach it.
Right.
So I think that's all entangled in that, and there was federal legislation in 5 years of education. I think they tried to take that into. So we have to kind of find out what real legislation is, and then hold the local school districts their feet to the fire to implement it. I don't think they try to able to get away with everything only when they're confronted with the actual legislation. So they,
So Bishop is sharing with us just the need to look at what the actual legislation is and look beyond just our local level to ensure that our districts are following the letter of the law as far as where funding is going and that we are receiving within our Catholic schools what we need to receive. Funding will definitely be a significant issue for providing educational experiences and opportunities in our Catholic schools, and that is not something to take lightly. And I think it will be of incredible value to us to talk to those districts and dioceses who are already implementing these things and work with them to see how they did that. And the bishop's office in Washington, yes. Okay.
They're working.
Wonderful. Now we just need to get an invitation to go talk with them. Okay.
They worked very hard on that legislation, and I was part of that committee, so I met a couple times with Senator Harkin. He was very sympathetic to us. He's the one who had he was the primary author of that. So he's very interested, but he's gone. But our new Axie, she's Sacred Heart, new congressperson.
Okay.
Talk to her about it. I don't know. She's on it. You might check with her.
Okay.
But those are the
other resources to check.
I would go first to the U.S. Bishop, and then take that.
Okay. Any other questions or feedback from our audience? I want to respect our time and end very close to our 10:30 time. Yes, let's go ahead and do that via email. I will create a poll for everyone. It really looked like from our last poll that mornings worked best for everyone. Someone suggested moving back to about 9:30 instead of 9. So we'll kind of address that in our poll, and then I'll be able to look and see what works. And for regular meetings, Veronica, who's quite much farther away, anyone else will always have this go-to meeting option. Okay, anything else?
My preference is always the after Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, even Monday is better. But we have a number of meetings on Tuesday, a staff meeting and that other kind of stuff. So
okay.
It worked out for today, but like next week we have staff, so I would be all day in a meeting if it had been next week. So.
Okay, we will try to avoid Tuesdays and Wednesdays for our faithful individuals. Wonderful. Okay, let's go ahead and those of you who have the card, Bishop Pates can lead us in our prayer for a new bishop as we close our meeting today.
And as I close, just want to thank all those involved in this. Full speed ahead. Please, difficult to organize it, but
yes.
And move forward, and particularly you, Jess, the information also, that you have with us, be very great to us. I think it's very pro-life.
Very pro-life, yes. Gentle Shepherd, you lead your church to the new moments with loving care. You have blessed our diocese time and again with good, wise, and holy bishops. We are grateful for Bishop Page's dedicated ministry to us. We ask you to bless him as he completes his service to the Diocese of Des Moines. Grant us another bishop who will inspire the clergy, religious, and laity of our community to serve generously with him so that we might reign together in your love and continue the good work you have begun in us for the sake of all people. We ask this through our Lord Jesus Christ, your Son, who lives and reigns with you in the Holy Spirit, one God, forever and ever. Amen. Spirit.
Where's the statue at?
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, Jess.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. All right. How can
White, yeah. My best friend lives near Tacoma, Washington, and they're getting all that snow out there. They never get snow like that. It's been snowing for a week. Yeah.
How much did it have?
I think around 10 inches or something.